All right, listeners, welcome to episode 5 of the Real Takes Tennis podcast. It recorded on middle Monday. We were gonna record on middle Sunday, but again, unforeseen issues that are
The
preventing us.
usual extenuating circumstances.
Usual extenuating circumstances ranging from laundry to dinner to meal prep. But
Whitewater
that's
rafting.
whitewater rafting. But that's okay because today was quite an electric day, and that gave us more time to watch
And
and
really
comment.
an electric week, right? I mean, the this has been a crazy first 8 days of Wimbledon.
Yeah, it's been absolutely ridiculous. I think it's weeks like this that make me think there really needs to be more. There needs to be a grass 1000 event, and the grass court season needs to be longer. Like there's literally no rationale for it just being hard and clay and grass like one a month. Like I think more like this tennis that's been played is like a different kind of tennis, and I think that's like highly engaging to viewers right now.
It's funny you mentioned that because right away I'm thinking about that. I think it was a New York Times article I sent you about how grass has been changing since they've been mixing. I think I'm forgetting the strains of grass that they're mixing, but it's basically slowed down and made a truer bounce.
Yeah.
And the result of that is you never have players anymore who are like specialists on one surface. Basically, the player who's dominating hard courts is dominating clay and dominating grass. And I think it's going to be way more interesting to see if the points reflect more, you know, weight on grass, how players have to adjust their games and how much harder it is to like win on all surfaces and actually end the year as number one.
Yeah, and I think like part of this is it also changes a little bit to an extent what we think we know about what it takes to win on all surfaces, right? Because as the surface changes, it impacts how you play, it impacts like the mental side of what you think you need to do in order to win, right? And so I think it's a super exciting time.
Plus,
But
I'll say coverage has been too good. I know we've complained about that in the past, but coverage has been too good to not make a middle of the tournament episode.
Yeah, okay. I'll caveat that by saying the coverage today, for example, in like these round of 16 third round matches was electric. But the thing that annoys me the most is when it's like like towards the end of the fourth set, towards the end of the fifth set, and things are happening. I really don't want to see like middle of the first set matches on center court. Like I have no interest in doing that. The amount of times that I think Holger and Fokina were shown earlier this week, it was pretty much only shown towards like the fifth set and not towards like the fourth and third when there was like really good tennis. It was always just okay, start of the match. Like I don't care if Fed and Nadal are playing and it's the first game of the first set. Like I will still prefer to see like the fifth set of literally like any other match.
Right, and
Because
I definitely don't want to see the split screen with Sabalenko and Pavlyuchenko and God knows who else. Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
the split screen is just not the move. And I also hate when there's matches going on when ESPN also is like, yeah, we're just gonna show you highlights of what's happened today. It's like, dude, show me the matches that are happening right now.
Right. I guess the
Yeah,
bar for us is just so low where like just showing one men's match is like considered good coverage, but to your point, it's nice when ESPN and ESPN2 are showing two
yeah,
different courts and you get to
yes.
elect between how you want to allocate your time.
Yeah, 2 points is like 2 points on what you just said is like compared that to the French Open where we were, borderline had to pay for Peacock, which we didn't. And so having this on national television is really nice. But yeah, also sorry, I completely forgot the second point you just made. What was the second point you just made?
I just said the bar has been
Oh,
is really low.
yeah, yeah. No, I had a second point, but I completely forgot it. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Yeah, but no, this is like I think the thing I like about the round of 16 matches is that there's the quality of tennis is still so high, but there's like enough matches where you're still getting like good quality, or you're still getting enough matches to play, right? And I think that's like the best part as opposed to just round one, round two.
And I'll add this. I think it all started in the third round in the top quarter
Yeah,
where we had, and we're going to get into this, right? Right. But
yeah,
Carlos Jerry, Zverev Berrettini, Tiafo
yeah.
Dimitrov, Fokina Varuna, Medvedev Vucevic, Lehechka Paul, Eubanks O'Connell. Oh my God. Like that. This was one of the most stacked upper quarters
Yeah.
that I've ever seen in a main draw in a third round. It just so happened that the entire top half was stacked. And then you know what that means. The bottom half was just absolute shit other than Djokovic, which we discussed was a function of Djokovic just seemingly being so much better than anyone else that it makes the delta appear a lot bigger than maybe it is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I mean, we'll talk about some of the other the quarterfinals on that half of the draw specifically. But I do think that the upper half is definitely looking like it's going to be more exciting quarterfinals than the bottom half, which is fine. We'll take what we can get right now. But cool. I think why don't we start off with maybe today's action. I think
Whew.
shout out to ESPN for displaying this. Oh, that was my point. That they displayed both matches today on both courts or on
Right.
both channels. That
Separately. Yep.
yes, separately, so we could be able to watch both. That was awesome. Why don't we start off with Holger Dimitrov? I think this was a match that was getting. I mean, that this for all of us in our respective chats was getting us quite riled up. But it was. I mean, I think maybe we'll start off with Holger, but the kid's an absolute stud. Like it doesn't matter at this point. Like we could, his on court antics are a little questionable at times, but there's no doubt this guy is an absolute baller. He's playing incredibly well right now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was a really good call out last two times ago when you said he's first team. Number one, there's no doubt he's had the most solid results behind Djokovic this year. He's really the only
Yeah,
player playing up to his ranking. Again, to the point about on-court antics, I think he won the second set off a challenge call that he was trying to make that distracted Dimitrov, but Dimitrov was just the bigger man and didn't complain about it. I think we have different opinions about whether or not he should have voiced his
yeah,
concern because I think he had every right to voice his concern and try to get the chair to overrule that decision because it was a horrible, horrible call. And then I think Holger did something, fairly similar at the end there too, where he,
yeah,
made a challenge call. I think it was the right call by the a chair allowing him to make it, but it's just fascinating to see. Not to mention all the fist pumps to his box on like short ball errors by Dimitrov. But bottom line takeaway from this match for me is the usual. We've said it before. I'll say it again. Coaches, parents, please, for the love of Jesus, do not teach your students and children one-handed backhands. It was hilarious to see Darren Cahill in the last game commend Runa's tennis IQ for pushing every ball to Dimitrov's backhand, literally not letting him hit a forehand in the last like 5 points, and then stealing away the match. I thought all that indicated to me was an IQ over 50.
yeah. There's so much to unpack there because maybe let's start off with the hindrance bit. So I think both in the spirit of the game as well as the actual rules here, it's 100% a hindrance. I think the reason why Dimitrov didn't make more of a deal to the umpire is because the umpire himself didn't see it. I think that's why he was just like, okay, if this guy didn't see it, that's literally exactly what he's going to tell me, and I'm just going to waste like 5 minutes arguing for absolutely no reason. So I'm not actually clear on what the rule is here in terms of how the umpires would do it because I can completely see them go another way and just like be like replay the point, but it's crystal clear that it should be a hindrance here, right?
I think so. I think the rule is that if you make a noise during the point that's not a grunt, then I mean you're basically distracting the opponent. And I think what Dimitrov could have done, obviously hindsight's 2020, but he should have stopped the point after
Yeah.
Dimitrov made the call instead of continued to play it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like if once Verna like pointed up his sign, or pointed up the hand, he could have just stopped play right there.
Could I say one more thing to you about the
Yeah,
chair? I thought it was
yeah,
interesting. We all heard the sound of a let on
yes,
one of the first serves in one of the penultimate games. I do
yeah,
wonder if it was the acoustics where the sound off the racket was delayed and it sounded like a let because that sounded like the most obvious let of all
yes,
time that the chair missed. And Dimitrov didn't seem to complain about it. So maybe it was the correct call. But overall, I thought the chair was a little sus because you just cannot make those types of mistakes in a match like this.
And we're not even including the fact that on set point in the third set, right? Dimitrov hits a ball that's like a foot out. Rune challenges it, and it's clearly shown to be a foot out,
Right.
right? Like the umpire didn't even make that call. The baseline umpire didn't even make that call. And it's like if he didn't have any challenges left, he would have been completely fucked. Like
Right.
that's inexcusable from the umpire. The question I did come from the that I was thinking about after this is, do you think umpires and chair umpires should? Do you think that like Wimbledon should remove them from the game and go full electronic line calling? I actually think no for moments like this because it makes the game so much more entertaining, and you understanding how to use your challenges and how to deal with the deal like use your challenges and deal with the lines calling is part of judgment on the court.
I agree with you. I think for the personality of the sport and for management of the players in these like situations that are not in the rules, you have to have
Yeah,
someone there, right? The analogy for me is like what's going to happen with self-driving. You're
yeah,
going to have at one right now, there is one driver per car. Eventually, there will be one driver to 10 cars where the driver is sitting in a control room monitoring 10 screens. Then it's going to be one to 1,000, then it's going to be one to a million. But you're always going to have one person who is responsible for everything going on. And I think the chair has to be there. But to your point, right? The chair, I was just looking at the situations that affected Dimitrov, but you're right. Of course, there was a situation there that affected Runa too. And overall, just when you yeah, points like that, especially on a grass court too, where
yeah.
again from that New York Times article, Rublev literally said something hilarious where he was like, you could be playing amazing, make a double fault, get broken, or you could be playing like shit, not be able to move. Your opponent makes a double fault, and suddenly you win a set. Obviously, we've talked about this. That's probably not the best mindset to have because you shouldn't be attributing results to luck and should be focusing on what's in your control and the fundamentals. But
Yeah.
to a degree, I mean, you start looking at the set scores, and it's kind of true. We've been seeing a lot of breakers, a lot of sets decided by literally 1 point, a lot of matches decided by one
Decided, yeah.
point. I'm not gonna ruin our gaff of the week, but a lot of matches determined by 1 point. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think this week has shown that the margins are so incredibly thin at every single level. And it's funny because the more I think about it now, the more I realize like if Dimitrov wins that second set, I think he wins this match. I still, I think that he would have had so much momentum and he would have had so much confidence that he would have continued to play like lights out tennis because he's had such a ridiculously good week. I mean, I was really reading some stuff about what Tiafoe said after his match, and he was like, I played like a person who didn't have an ATP point. So there's some fault on his end of like not playing that well. But he was like Dimitrov just played really, really well. I mean, that slice backhand was absolutely frustrating Tiafoe. And so it's so crazy to think that what would have happened if he had won that second set.
You know, I would like to I would like to agree with you, but I just think the reality is that the one-handed backhand was going to break down. It was just a ticking time bomb of when
Yeah.
Runa hit enough balls to get a stranglehold over this match. And what I noticed too on your point about the slice backhand was I thought it worked really well against Tiafo, but Runa was unfazed. Every knife cross court that Dimitrov hit was countered with a heavy curling inside in forehand by Runa, making Dimitrov run over to the forehand side and opening up the entire backhand side of the court again. So again, I think a broad strategy that just continues to come up with these single-handed backhand players is when Taylor Fritz exposed Tsitsipas during the clay court season and said the strategy is you use the inside in to open up the backhand, and it's been working wonders. I mean, I think Holger's forehand with his kind of more traditional grip is well equipped to handle the low balls, I think, better than some of the folks that have the Western grip.
Yeah, it's funny because I was actually going to say like the last point of the match or the cup, whichever point was that long slice backhand rally between Holger and Dimitrov represented like the entire like strategy or the pattern of the match, right? It almost felt like Dimitrov was basically trying to chip every backhand cross court, wait for Holger to potentially give him a short enough ball for Grigor to use his forehand. right? But the thing was, Holger's just using that cross court backhand, and like you said, just going super heavy cross court and waiting for Grigor to miss because he's more likely to miss than Rune is, right? I actually think the counter that Dimitrov should have done that he didn't do enough of was just once you chip backhand, go down the line, right? Either go inside in off the forehand or chip backhand to get that slice to get Rune to hit that forehand low, right? And I think that would have been a lot harder to do because I agree that he's more equipped to hit those low balls, but on the run when you're moving from the backhand wing to or from the ad side to the do side, I think it's significantly harder and it opens up the court a lot more. And that's what I think Dimitrov did a poor job in.
And just to add on Dimitrov, he has been playing well for a while now, right? We knew
Yeah.
he was going to be a threat on grass with, I think, the tournament right before in Queens, right? He takes out Rinderknech, Rusevori, and Cerundolo consecutively.
Yeah.
And I think he had some other results too that were pretty impressive. So we knew he was going to do well, and I think it's great to see that he's kind of starting to put the game together too, right? And stop being Mr. Nice Guy and actually, putting results together, putting his head down, not focusing on the handshake and how he looks, but the results.
Yeah, I think I really wish he would have been able to win this match because I think he would have had a great. I would have been really interested to see how he played Carlos, right? Like I think this is probably the first time he's made like a deep run in a slam for quite a long time. But he's now I think he's probably top 15, top 20 in the world. I mean he's seeded 21, I think. So um, this bodes really well, I think, for his future looking at the US Open.
It does, but he would have had no chance against Carlos. We see what happens when incomplete players take on a complete player like a Djokovic or a Carlos, right? I mean,
Yeah,
Berrettini got after the first set, granted, he's a great player, right? Again, another
yeah.
guy who it's a pleasure to watch him step up again after injuries in a tumultuous last 6 months. But I mean, the bottom line is when you don't have a backhand or you have a weakness, a glaring weakness like that, you are going to get your ass whooped.
I was almost going to say the strategy or the style that Carlos and Holger were playing, or like basically the matches were very similar, right? Because both Grigor and Berrettini have that single-handed or have were chipping their backhand heavily and trying to use their forehand to dictate. The thing I think Carlos did really well in this match today was he was not afraid to go line on both his backhand and on the forehand, right? And I think his forehand has so much more juice than Holger's that it's more difficult for Berrettini to be able to slice that backhand. But in terms of the patterns that we were talking about earlier, in terms of what Holger was doing, pretty similar in that Carlos is trying to hit a or similar in the sense that Carlos was trying to use his inside out and inside in forehands to basically generate a lot more pace and open up the court a lot better.
And what's cool about Carlos with the one punch man power is that he honestly, what I feel is he doesn't give a fuck which side he's hitting to. He is just trying to blast that ball, but because he has so much power, it works. I genuinely don't. I feel like his ability to execute renders his strategy very simple, where it's literally just like I'm going to move the ball side to side and just
Yeah.
rip into the open court, as opposed to like tactically pushing the ball to the backhand like Rune did in the last game. He's just going to uncoil on everything.
Yeah, it's actually really funny you mentioned that because one of the top players in our section, right, when we were playing, we'll share his name off air, but this is a guy who is absurdly talented. And I remember one of my friends was asking him, just like, "Hey, what's your strategy when you like are playing really good guys?" And he's like, "Dude, I don't have a strategy. I hit the ball really hard on the do side, and then I hit the ball really hard on the ad side." And it's like the exact same thing for some of these guys who have such good talent and have the ability to strike that ball so well, the strategy becomes very simple. It's like it doesn't matter if they know where I'm going, right? Like they still have to deal with the pace of the ball, and I know what my response is going to be. So I don't care. I'm just going to move you around the court, and you have to deal with it.
And you can do that with court positioning too, which is another thing
Yeah,
that Carlos nails down, right? It's the same as
yeah,
Federer too, where if I hit a big serve and paint the line and I am inside the baseline on the second shot, things become a lot simpler when you've taken away that much time from your opponent.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the things one of this kind of relates into the other thing about movement, which this I mean today was just like a full on display of guys slipping all over the court, right? We saw like I mean not even today, but like even earlier this week, Andy had that rough slip where he almost hurt his hip. I mean Stefanos slipped a couple times today. Holger slipped once or twice, and Grigor slipped a bunch of times. So the grass is really, really like I don't think I've seen as many players as I have, or maybe I haven't noticed, but like it feels like guys are slipping a lot more, and the movement is a lot tougher this time.
And this goes back to the first thing that we talked about, which is should there be or should there not be more grass court tennis, right? The players clearly
Yeah,
don't care about this as much. They're willing to just use their hard court preparation and clay court preparation and then just try to tree at Wimbledon, which honestly is kind of the strategy on grass in general, is like I
yeah,
think Serena has mentioned this before too, where she talks about how like when she practices her serve less, it gets better.
yeah,
And I remember I think Mary Jo Fernandez or something was interviewing her, and Mary Jo was like, "No, that's not what I wanted you to say to the people." Um, but it's similar with grass, where you kind of want to just empty your mind and have the
yeah,
emotional bandwidth to be able to handle the inevitable big
yeah.
moments that are going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Right. I mean, this is similar to like what we were talking about earlier, where on the earlier episode of where Pete, one of the things that changed Pete's mindset from becoming like an early round loser to like an actual champion, right? Was he was saying that there's like one bad bounce, one bad shot, and the match is over on grass. And his coach was like, no, that's not true. You like, yeah, sure, like that might happen, but you have to just take it and move on, right? And so I think that mindset is definitely opening up a lot of the players' options this week. Cool. I think the only other thing to talk about today on today's matches was Eubanks over Tsitsipas. I mean,
Who banks?
another shout out for the first team all ATP. I mean, if this didn't convince you guys, or if last week didn't convince you guys, this is this week and this run of Wimbledon. Well, the guy is just hitting the absolute brakes off the ball. I mean, he must have had I don't know how many winners and aces he hit today, but he's beating the shit out of the ball.
Yeah, and actually going back for 1 second to the
Yeah.
Dimitrov Runa match, I wanted to cite an interesting stat that I saw as well,
Hmm.
which was credit to Dimitrov. He's totally changed his serve. So in 2016, his average first serve speed was 115 miles an hour. This
Hmm.
Wimbledon, this match, it was 129. So he added 14
Wow.
miles an hour on the first serve. Second serve average speed was 93 in 2016. Today it was 100. It was 100 miles an hour. So he added +7 on the
Wow.
second. Phenomenal effort there. He's definitely improved his game. He's gotten stronger, but just missing that killer instinct, right? And I really hope he can claim it in the twilight of his career and show what his talent has indicated.
Yeah, I think the only thing missing from his resume at this, I mean, Grand Slam's out of the question, but if he could make the finals of a Grand Slam in these last couple of years, I think that would be a great stamp to his career, right? And that would put him in that same category of like the Berdiches of the world, the Raoniches of the world, the guys who like competed in the big three, big four generation and had really, really good results and made really good runs and slams.
Yeah, I think there's no reason with his talent he couldn't have reached a top five ranking. Did he ever I think he reached top 10. I believe he
Top
got up
10 for
to number
sure.
9 at one point. We can fact check that right now, but I think he has top five talent. It's just about kind of, you know, putting it all together in the big moments like we saw today and not letting the backhand break down.
And
But
changing the strategy
and changing the
of
strategy.
of not just slicing and chipping and going back cross court and
Yep.
actually going down the line. And as we're seeing this, we're seeing he reached number 3 in the world, so he was
Good for
top
him.
five.
Good
Yeah,
for him. I'm
that
sure
is
it was a brief stint, but that's awesome to see. So, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dimitrov was up a break in the second, right?
yes, he was
I
4-2, I think.
actually
Yeah,
think the turning point of that whole match, and even though the commentator said both players played really well throughout the match, I think Dimitrov's level went down a notch after he shanked a forehand down break point. I think it was 4-2 in the second. And it was one of the tightest forehands I've seen. Rune hit a decently solid return, and Dimitrov just tentatively shanked it, basically almost hit the chair umpire. Um, and after that, I really just thought he was shaky. He put together some really good strings of points at the wrong time, right? Like in the third set when he was down in the breaker, he suddenly just like turns on the puts his foot on the gas and starts ripping, and then of course shoots himself in the foot by trying to make a challenge on a baseline call where the ball was in. So I just don't. I think he was just like too up and down, where he was like for the most part tentative and like content with rallying with Rune, which I don't think is a strategy because Rune is going to push you to death and guide the ball to death. But he stepped up at odd times, and it was just too few and far between. Now, moving on to Eubanks, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Phenomenal match. I thought what was really interesting was both post-match interviews, right? One right after the match, and then one right after with BG, and then another, actually, the third with Chris McKendry and
James
James
I
Blake.
believe. Yeah.
Serve. That is all he said. He said, I like to think of myself as a server, and I do not pride myself on the love games that I win. I pride myself on the situations where I am down in the game, down love 15, down 15-30, where I've just broken and I need to consolidate a break, where I've just been broken and I want to make sure I don't get broken again. He did a phenomenal job of that. I mean, that last game got dicey. And
Facing a break point.
multiple break points and just looking like not phased at all. Again, we've talked about the college experience, talked about the pressure situation where you're playing for a team. It seems to translate well here, where he just knew that Tsitsipas had nothing to hurt him. And if he made a first serve, he was going to have an open court forehand. And he just executed every single time on the big points and was able to close it out, which was awesome to see.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to Sisyphus, it is funny because when they like shook hands at the net, I was like, dude, Sisyphus is actually they're almost the same height. I think they're both almost like 6'5", 6'6". And so even like the serve that I thought Eubanks did really well, or is like utilized really well, that serve down the tee is money. It literally doesn't matter if you know where it's going there. The distance to cover from that point, from the return stance all the way to that tee point, it's absurd. There's no way you can get it. And you even throw in the fact that like sometimes he might even be able to add like a little variation with that slice and it's curving away. At 6'6", that's a wrap. There's no way anyone can get that.
And we've said it before too on the ad side, that tee serve is also going to the forehand, which on grass is the weaker return, where Tsitsipas with the fact that, he's actually an exception where he has more of an Eastern forehand grip, which is more similar to the backhand, so he doesn't have to change as dramatically. But against most guys, you're getting a bunt return and you've taken away the angle too, so you have either direction to go and approach. And he just executed that flawlessly. But another thing on his serve is that the commentators were mentioning Darren kept emphasizing he doesn't have like a massive serve. It's huge and he has angles, but for a guy 6'6", he's not serving like an Isner or a Karlovic. He's hitting his spots and focusing on the second shot. And I think that's what completes and rounds out his game a lot, is that he's not that reliant on his serve. Actually, he has deadly ground strokes too.
Yeah, I think part of the reason he probably doesn't have like the same raw type of power as of the other guys is I still think he needs to like add some like muscle to his frame, right? Like he's still a really like thin guy, and I think that's probably why. But not to say that his serve is obviously ineffective, but I think probably one of the reasons he's not able to generate as much raw pace as like the Milos and the other guys is because of that.
Yep. And as much as I would love to see him hit the gym and gain some muscle, I actually kind of disagree with you where you see a guy like Djokovic, right? Tennis is just such a technical sport where if you have the form right and you have the elasticity and you know how to transfer weight through the kinetic chain, like he can get power just by doing a little bit of resistance work, right? He doesn't have to do anything insane.
No, for sure. At the end of the day, this is like a skill sport, right? Where the technique and the raw transfer of power and all the things you mentioned are what's generating like effortless types of power, right? So Yeah, no, completely agree there. But on the point of that last game. I mean, when he made some pretty. He was just like he made some really like bad unforced errors where he was just shanking a couple balls. And I thought like at out, or it might have been 30-40 that like there was if he gets broken here, I don't think he wins this match. I think that Tsitsipas, like with his experience and how like how much tennis he's been playing with his experience, like he would have closed this out. I think this actually leads in really nicely to the quarterfinals and who we think who we think has a better chance, Carlos or Holger, and B, what we think the strategies are going to be for both. I think you'll probably are going to go with we're probably both going to go with Carlos here, but yeah,
Yeah, so do you mean better chance at winning the tournament, winning the match, or beating Djokovic, or are they all one and the same?
while they're all one and the same.
I think obviously I'd love to see Carlos win this. I think he has the best chance of beating Djokovic.
Yeah,
Although everyone right now has a sub 1% chance. I think the strategy against there is really no strategy against Carlos. You have to play the best
yeah,
tennis of your life, and you have to hope that he's not playing that well because anything short, he's just gonna rip, right?
yeah,
He has all the pieces. He's gonna throw in the drop shot if you get too far back. Um, he has a big serve. He's gonna, you know, look for breaks. I think the strategy that Carlos is going to employ at Rune is actually going to be to attack the forehand.
yep,
I think Rune's forehand breaks down under pressure. I have a bit of a hot take where I actually think, despite the fact that he wins all these close matches, I do not think he's proved to me that he's clutch, completely clutch yet. I actually think 9 times out of 10, his opponents have imploded, right? He
yeah,
has, we're going to talk about Fokina. Fokina imploded. He's played Cerundolo. Cerundolo imploded in the, I think it was in the French. He's played Van de Zandschulp. Van de Zandschulp imploded where he was up 5-2 in the third on a clay court. I just, I think his forehand gets tight. I think I would be attacking that shot. But knowing Carlos,
yeah.
like we said earlier, he's just going to be having fun and blasting.
Yeah, I was gonna say I completely agree. I think Carlos is gonna exploit the cross court forehand. That's gonna be the bread and butter pattern to open up the entire court. I actually will disagree with you. I actually think from what I've seen of with Holger, his he doesn't his I completely agree that his opponents implode, but I think that's to be commended for Holger that
Hmm.
like you know what, if you just stay in the match and you don't kill yourself, you have chances to end up winning the match, right? And I think that's an actually remarkably like mentally tough. That's a trait of like a really mentally tough athlete, and which is really impressive because he's only 20 years old.
Very true. He hangs around. I cannot deny
Yeah,
that. I just don't think he does what like a Djokovic or a Federer or a Nadal did, where they would be ripping winners down break
yeah,
points. He's more looking for the error from his opponent, which
yeah,
clearly has worked.
yeah. No, I 100% agree, and I think his take back on the forehand, I don't think he's going to be able to like generate winners off that side when things get really tight, right? Because they're going to be attacking it like no other. And so, yeah, completely agree with you there. Cool. I think we're both backing Carlos to make it through to the semis. Maybe we jump down to the other quarterfinal match.
Medvedev,
Medvedev.
Eubanks.
Yep,
Yeah, I think
go for it.
Medvedev is really flying under the radar here, right? Got
Yeah,
a withdrawal win against Lehechka after winning the
Lehechka.
first two sets. By the way, good first call. Good again, first team all ATP pick from P. Lehechka's had a great year so far. He's a dangerous player. Um, but I think this is a winnable match for Eubanks, right? As long as he doesn't
Yep.
throw too many of the games that he played on serve, like the last one against Tsitsipas,
Yeah.
I can see him doing damage on a grass court. Medvedev again has shown that he's content playing 20 feet behind the baseline, and I just
Baseline.
think
Yeah.
Eubanks is going to take it to him. Um, he's going to have to play his best match of the tournament and probably his best match of the year. But again, I think it's winnable. I think the matchup is is good for Eubanks in the sense that he's going to have short balls to look at. He's going to be able to crush those balls, but the one intangible that Medvedev has that I could relate to is the passing shots and the two shot
Yeah.
passes. I can see Medvedev dipping a lot of balls down to the Eubanks feet and looking for those second shot passes. He covers the court like a cat. So man, it's a tough call. Obviously, I'd love to see Eubanks win, but I'd have it at, probably 55-45 for Med, maybe
Yeah,
60-40.
yeah, I'll probably go even higher than that because I think this is the type of match where we're going to see the backhand get exposed, right? Just like Dimitrov
Yep.
did, just like Berrettini did. I think Medvedev is way too smart to not exploit that. And no, even though Eubanks has a much better serve than a lot of the other one-handers, uh, I think Medvedev has. I think Medvedev's going to win this match and reach his first ever semifinal, or first ever semifinal at Wimbledon because
Yep.
he like Eubanks also has like a really good serve, right, and is perfectly capable of just taking this to a tiebreak. And he also honestly has more chances probably to break Eubanks than Eubanks does to Medvedev, and so I'll even give Medvedev like a higher chance.
Yeah, I can buy that. Not to mention, Eubanks has been broken by Medvedev multiple times the last
Both
time they
times.
played in Miami. It was a 3-5
Yeah.
match. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough ask. But again, would love to see Eubanks make a semifinal for America.
Yep. Awesome. Should we go to the bottom half of the draw where Yannick Sinner is playing Roman Safulin? Uh, yeah, if you haven't heard that name, we haven't seen him play either very much. But here he is, finds himself in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, pretty dangerous player. Obviously, not much known about him beyond the fact that he has just a monster game and has had a pretty decent year. I
Yeah.
will say the draw was obviously pretty weak. That third of the, or I should say, the third quarter of the draw was pretty weak. I know P is pretty bullish on Sinner, and we've watched him hit second serves 5 minutes after winning a match like 0-1. So we know this guy has the desire. For me, the thing has always been, I think Sinner almost wants it too much, where he puts so much pressure on himself. He can kind of implode in those big moments. I think, I think knowing him, he's gonna win this match and make it to the semis. The real question for me is what can he do in the next round?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think Yannick's the favorite to win this match. I think the one thing I'll call out about Yannick in general is that I think his serving has improved quite a bit. I actually think what he's gone back to now is the old pinpoint serve because he used to do. I think in Indian Wells when we saw him a couple years back, he was doing pinpoint. Then he changed the platform, and now he's gone back to pinpoint. And I think he feels that it's a more fluid motion because I mean we've seen him practice serves out right after losing a match, right? So he clearly feels that the serve is like the missing piece in order for him to be like continue to be successful in slams and make the pushes towards like winning a title. And I think the one thing that I've noticed, I only watched a little bit of Spinner Schwartzman earlier this week, but he himself said that he was serving like incredibly well. And I think this new change plus Darren's advice has made him like a much more complete player.
Right. And there's no excuse for a guy who's 6'2", who's elastic and
Yeah.
lanky to get a little bit more pop and power on the serve. I think one of the technical things on his serve that was an issue is I've noticed this even with Tsitsipas is they kind of have copied Federer's backbend, but like taken it a bit too far instead of focusing on moving through forward and right into the court.
Yeah.
They're they're kind of trying to add that variety and the disguise that Federer had, which I think it's a trade-off one way or another.
Yeah, 100%. But if he wants to beat Djokovic, he's going to need to serve. So we'll see how he does. Barring an upset loss to Safulin in the quarterfinals. Cool, awesome. Let's move on to Rublev Djokovic.
Da,
Uh,
da, 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 da. Supreme leader.
uh, as we've talked about on multiple episodes, Rublev he might enjoy this thrashing he's about to get, but we got to give him credit for an absolutely big time win over Bublik. I mean, we all saw the point of potentially the tournament. Just a massive effort, and he goes into the quarterfinals with, a good amount of experience playing this past week, but yeah, it's over, folks.
So a couple interesting stats on Rublev. One, I'll actually start with the opponent that he vanquished that P
Yes.
mentioned, Alexander Stanislavovich Sasha Bublik. Um, are just a raw talent. So right before Wimbledon, Bublik won Halle, beating Chorich, Struff, Sinner, Zverev, and Rublev consecutively, 5 out of 5 matches. This guy is a straight baller. When he puts his head in the game, I mean, on a grass court, he was actually one of our dark horses to potentially, win the tournament. And he's the type of guy who, with the limited pressure that he feels, could be pretty scary for someone like a Djokovic to play. The other thing I will say about Rublev is, interestingly enough, he is the last person to bagel Djokovic. Serbian Open 2022, Rublev bagel Djokovic 6-0 in the third set to win the tournament. So obviously it's a pretty lopsided head to head. That was
Yeah.
probably one of his only few wins against Djokovic.
Yeah.
But you know, this is a guy who has the talent. I think in a best of five, it's all do 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 do. We just lay out the carpet for the Joker, but we'll see. You never know. That's why I don't bet my money on tennis.
Yeah, that's why you lace him up. If I'm not mistaken, Rublev played Djokovic earlier this year in the Australian Open, and yeah, got waxed, but he's hitting the ball absolutely great. I think one of the things I saw that he did really well with against Bublik is he was moving Bublik around incredibly well, and I think if he wants to beat Djokovic, that's the only chance he has. He's got to keep moving him side to side and hoping that like he can find a crack and break through there.
Yep. The backhand will be exploited, and I will caveat my
Yeah.
last sentence, right, which is one, we've mentioned how hard it is to play at home in Serbia, where
Yeah.
Djokovic is a god. It's
Yeah.
not surprising that he had some trouble winning that tournament. Not to mention, to your point, Rublev has since lost 4-1 in the World Tour Finals, 1, 2, and 4 in Australia. So, yeah, I would probably expect another drubbing. The question really is he going to take a set? And I think the
Uh,
answer is no.
okay. That was my next question is literally going to be over under 10 games. Does Rublev get more than 10 games?
I think because it's a grass court, he's going to hold serve a few times.
Okay.
I think the question there is, are we going to see a breaker? I think that's like going to be that's going to be the line for me. I also
Okay.
don't think we're going to see a breaker. I think the
Yeah.
closest set will be 7-5 at
Yeah.
most.
I agree. But on that point, and this probably leads into to the transition of like not just today, but like the rest of the week's matches. One of the things that other players have done really well, and not just like the good players, right? Like, or not just the top ranked players, but one of the things that the other players like Jordan Thompson have done against Djokovic earlier this week is serving and volleying and changing up the style of play, right? And that did prove to be really, really effective early this week. So there is a chance that Rublev might decide to break out of his comfort zone and try something new if he wants to have a chance. But yeah, I've never actually seen Rublev serve and volley, so that would be really funny to see.
I think I would love to see him do that. The probability of that happening is extremely slim, knowing his style and his stubbornness and reliance on the forehand. But again, if maybe he'll give something new a shot. I do
You
appreciate
know,
you. Sorry, go
no,
ahead.
no, I was gonna say, in Barcelona when he won that title with Cat, or Madrid when he won that doubles title with Cat was at the net, and Rublev was just like heavy grinding from the back of the court, even on a short ball, just hitting it and then going straight back.
I will say I would not want to be the net player on the deuce side when Rublev's on the deuce side ripping forehands. That would be very frightening.
Yeah, no chance. Sorry, could continue.
I was gonna say I really appreciate you calling out Thompson. I
Yeah,
definitely wanted to shout this guy out. That was one
yeah,
of the first kind of matches I watched at Wimbledon this time around, and
yeah,
man, the guy shaved off his mustache and just looked like anything but a blue collar player against
yeah,
Joker. He was serving like a madman. He had
yeah,
9 aces by 1 all in the second and 15 through the second, which is just that itself is a crazy feat against Djokovic,
yeah.
who's the best returner alive. Um, But of course, he lived and died by the sword, and that one double in the breaker was the
Yep.
double that cost him. Although you did get the feeling that Joker was gonna Python constrict him at some point, just because the groundies, Thompson's groundies, are not exactly up to par.
I was literally gonna say it feels like almost that these guys have to that Jordan had to do like as well as he was playing, as well as he was serving. That's what he had to do to just stay in the match. Like if he hadn't hit as many aces as he had, this would have been like 2-2-2.
100%. And I want to call out one point where Joker hit a 113-mile-an-hour second serve slider tee on the ad
Oh
at
yeah.
5-4 to kind of push that to the breaker. Dude, the guy is just, I mean, he's a machine. And he's that's the juxtaposition that I'm talking about when I compare him to
Yeah.
like Aruna, right? Is
Yeah.
he is going for blood on big points.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you saw like Jordan get so frustrated throughout the match with a lot of the mistakes he was making, with a lot of what Novak was doing. And against pretty much, I mean, I only was able to see like a little bit of Djokovic play Hurkacz yesterday and today. And I mean, it felt like Hurkacz had to do like everything, like he had to do everything right in order to even be able to like stay in the match, which credit to him. He got the set that I thought Djokovic would only lose to Carlos, but he got it. So that was really impressive.
And you know, in his defense too, he could have easily won that match in straight
Yeah,
sets, right? But coulda, shoulda, woulda. Supreme leader will always reign. He did
yeah,
have he was up 6-3 in the first set breaker. He had the match on his rack or the set on his racket in the second at 5-4, I believe,
yeah.
serving in the breaker. But again, like you said, when you have to do everything right and every error is magnified to the level it is against Djokovic, you are going to cave over a 3 or 4 hour match.
I was gonna say the thing that we didn't even talk about was that this was like a match that was like over 2 days, right? And like we'll talk about Wimbledon scheduling and what they've done this week, but I was almost gonna say one of the things that in related to this whole like scheduling matches over multiple days and like I think having to play multiple days because of the curfew and stuff, it almost feels like one of the things that was really interesting about what Andy said against Stefanos was that like the first day of that match was played indoors, and then the second day was basically played outdoors. So the conditions changed, and that really affected. He said, I mean, at the end of the day, sure, whatever. Like Stefanos did what he did in order to win, but the conditions were ultimately different. So I like maybe this is a stupid question, but like, do you think it's harder to which situation would you rather be in? Where you have like a full night to think about what you've done and how you're going to deal with the next match, or if you had like a rain delay and you'd have to like sit for 2 hours and then come back and play that day.
Oh my God. Those are both brutal, brutal situations. I mean, I know in situation A, I'm not getting a wink of sleep.
Yeah,
Or if I am, I'm literally like dreaming about tennis and probably like my heart rate's probably at like 120 the whole night.
yeah.
Situation B,
Whoop is showing that you have like 5%
I would
recovery.
probably get a 1% recovery there, pretty low HRV.
Yeah,
But situation B for me is the worst situation
yeah,
just because the uncertainty of when you're going to go on and the chance that I like to mentally check out completely or mentally check in. And the fact that you have to kind of go back and forth and waver. I remember doing that multiple times in Santa Cruz in the juniors,
yeah,
waiting through those rain delays. You just wish at when they say it's a rain delay, you just wish they would call it and just say like come back tomorrow, don't worry about it. I'd much prefer that even if it was mid-match.
yeah. Because even on some level, when they say like, oh yeah, just stay on site because there's a rain delay, you're still expending energy. You're still thinking about it. You don't have the opportunity just to go back to the hotel room and chill and like actually talk strategy. You're still so tense at the site,
And
and that's problematic.
and not to mention you have to warm up again.
Yeah,
And usually obviously if there's a rain delay, the conditions aren't that great and it's tough to get warm
yeah,
after you've just gotten cold. And we're talking ice cold in a lot of these situations, right? So
yeah.
I would prefer situation B. What about you?
Yeah, no, I would 100% prefer situation B because I'm the same. I'm the same way. I think I agree with yeah, the entire rationale you just gave. But
But
awesome.
let's
Yeah.
roast Wimbledon scheduling for a second, real quick here.
Real quick, I know you have a stat that you pulled up, but I'll cue this up by just saying, like, dude, if there's matches, if there's earlier matches in the tournament, so round two, round one matches that haven't been finished, there's no reason to put the round three matches on. There's no reason to put the round two matches on. You go with the earlier matches first, so you give the players a chance to even get a little bit of rest, as opposed to the guys who have to play multiple days, which is what happens when you're playing like when you're doing what Wimbledon did.
Not to mention when they hop on, it's even later. So you've
Yeah,
got situations where Tsitsipas is playing 5 days in a row, which is
yeah,
just absolutely perplexing in a Grand Slam where you're playing 5 set tennis. It's really unfair on the body.
yeah.
And
Some
so
of
I'll
it.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say some of it is part, and some of Stefanos' thing was part inflicted because I remember when he beat it was either Dominic or when he beat Andy, one of the two matches, he played doubles that very same day, and I remember with his brother, and he played a 3 set match. Uh, so that's like 5 sets of tennis right then and there. And so the doubles part, that's fine, that's whatever. But yeah, the scheduling was a mess.
Absolutely. And not to mention, I just want to ring the simple alert alarm because he did also sign up for mixed doubles with Badosa, which
Doubles.
is just, I mean, if you're trying to win a Grand Slam, you're not playing 3 events. That's irresponsible in my opinion.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I mean, you know what? Like, I think are Grand Slams the only place that Grand Slams and ATP 1000 events the only place mixed doubles actually happens, or do they happen in like 500s and 250s? I don't actually
Not 100%
know.
sure. There may be some
Yeah,
situations where the tournament is joint between WTA and ATP where they have
yeah,
mixed, but
that's
it's
true.
probably not that frequent.
Yeah,
Nonetheless, I mean, the only reason I would play mixed doubles is if I were a blue collar player trying to make an extra 10K. Like, there's no
exactly.
reason
Yeah,
for Tsitsipas, who has a legitimate chance at getting deep in a major,
yeah,
to care about getting a couple more dollars, literally.
yeah, 100%. It would have
But
been, can you imagine him playing like those 2 sets against Murray, then playing the 3 sets against for doubles, and then playing another 2 sets of mixed doubles? Like it would have been a grind.
absolutely. And just to read out the stat for you guys, to give some color to how bad the scheduling was, less than 10 of the 80 plus matches scheduled for day two were completed, leaving the most matches scheduled for day three since middle Sunday of 2004.
Jesus
So we're
Christ.
talking about a backlog of 70 plus matches. Which is just, I mean, again, it's like, do people in Wimbledon, like, are they not able to sleep past 11 p.m.? Like, what's the deal with the
Yeah.
curfew? What's the deal with the scheduling? What's the deal with not having roofs over more of your courts? I do think there's a lot of charm to Wimbledon in the sense that you have to fight these conditions every year.
Yeah.
You know there's going to be rain. You know
Yeah.
you're going to be playing indoors and outdoors. You know every court has a different feel to it. But let's at least give some of that variability back to the players where they can focus on their games as opposed to what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%. I think an easy solution to this is either A, you have, you schedule early start times, which I'm not, as a non-early, as a late riser, I'm not for. Or you work out something with the neighborhood, with Wimbledon, like the neighborhood itself to extend the curfew. Like one of the things I was reading about someone who attended Wimbledon this year for the first time was saying that it's actually really quiet in the stadium. So I understand, like, there's a lot of people, it's getting loud, but there's no way you can convince me it's loud enough that like the entire city will be disrupted, right? Especially when you're playing like potentially under a closed roof. Like there's ways you can find to get around that because I mean US Open's in the middle of Queens and it's loud as hell too, right? But you don't hear like the curfew for Queens. So yeah, I think that this like they need to hopefully figure out a solution for next year.
And not to mention, if you're living in Wimbledon, you should probably be attending the tournament,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So
Yeah.
I don't know what those guys are doing at home. Like, that's literally the only reason why I assume one would live there,
Yeah. Or for the comfort.
or
But
for the
that's
20-pound strawberries and cream
yeah.
2 weeks a year.
Yeah. But that's cool. That was the Wimbledon ragging, Wimbledon scheduler ragging we want to get to.
We got to complain a little bit. Obviously, again, the coverage has been pretty decent. It's been above our previous expectations, but the scheduling had to be called out. And we're not trying to be Debbie Downers out here, just being realistic. Because again, to P's
Yeah,
earlier point a few podcasts ago, like this is why people don't want to attend the tournament
yeah.
live, and they could easily increase viewership by just fixing a few simple things and getting up to speed in the 21st century here.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. I think we wanted to cover maybe some other matches that happened earlier this week. Special shout out to our guy, the Iron Man, Sir Andy Murray, Sir Andrew Barron Murray,
I don't know.
OBE.
Order of the British Empire. I don't know how this guy keeps doing it. A marathon match against Tsitsipas, just a
Yeah.
heartbreaker that he couldn't get through it, but definitely got to shout him out for the effort. That was a brilliant match to watch.
I will say Stefanos actually, I thought he played absolutely unbelievable. He was hitting the brakes off the ball. And Andy, it felt like Andy almost to a certain extent was like confused on what he should do in order to like put him in a good position because Stefanos was playing like really, really well. Now, granted, he did go up 2-1 on that first day, but it felt like Stefanos let a couple points slip, and that's why like Andy was able to get that third set.
Yeah, and Andy's also playing. I mean, he said this in his press conference before playing Tsitsipas. This is the best he's felt since
Yeah,
2016 when he won the tournament.
yeah,
So, I mean, obviously, the British announcer ruined the interview by asking the next question of putting the expectation of like, oh, are you going to win it again? Um, but yeah, I think Murray really proved that he can hang with the top players, and he is just a grass court somehow, right? We've talked about this.
yeah.
He just translates his game perfectly to the grass. He has the perfect blend of like offensive and defense. He waxed Peniston in the first round. I actually thought he was going to beat Tsitsi, but uh, credit to the Greek for pulling through in the clutch. And
Yeah,
again, through all the trials and tribulations of having to play multiple matches a day.
yeah, it's like in the situation we described, right? Of like, would you rather have the rain breaks or the day? It's almost you kind of feel to an extent that Murray was thinking about it a lot more than Tsitsipas was. Like even though Tsitsipas was down 2-1 going in the next day, I would bet whatever, right? Like that Andy was for sure far more concerned, was thinking about this a lot more than Tsitsipas was that next day because I still thought Stefanos was playing like unbelievably well, and I saw the point that was referenced in his interview where the journalist was saying like that ball at 4-4 was actually in and it would have given you a chance at 15-40, and I almost like in hindsight you almost wish that the journalist like wouldn't have told him that because Andy's going to be thinking about that like no
For the
other.
rest of his life.
Yeah, for sure, because that was such a good chance.
Yep. Yep. And then speaking of Brits, I wanted to call out Brody, who made it the furthest out of all Brits in the tournament on the men's side,
Yeah,
ultimately losing to Shap, which is a pretty brutal loss. But
yeah,
what was cool about Brody, I didn't know this, is that he is 4-0 in five setters in his career, which
really.
is an insane stat. So this is a dude who shows up at Wimbledon and just somehow is clutch, like some of those other British players we've seen in the past who
Yeah.
have trained on this court since they were little kids.
Yeah, no, big time win for him beating who did he beat in order
He beat
to
Casper, which
Casper,
is,
that's who
I
it
mean,
was. Yeah.
obviously a overranked
Yeah.
seed.
Yeah, especially at Wimbledon. But no, it was good. I mean, the final set was 6-0 if I'm not mistaken, right? And so
Correct.
Casper at that point had already mentally checked out and was trying to hit the links. But yeah, that's a big time result for uh for Brody beating Casper.
Yep. And then only other one I wanted to call out was Wawrinka, who did log in a huge first
Oh
round win
yeah.
against Rusevori,
Yeah.
and then beat Echeverry as well, but just looked a little flat, and the age definitely showed against Joker, who tooled him.
Yeah, I mean the third set with Wawrinka and Djokovic was still really, really good quality, but I think Djokovic would like just absolutely ramped it up, and Stan just didn't know what to do in those moments, because Novak was just getting every single ball back. So good showing for Stan. And I think, yeah, I did not have him beating Ruusuvuori. So that's a big time result.
I don't think anyone did. And then I have
Yeah.
actually one more call out is Milos getting his first
Oh,
win
yeah.
since 2019. I think that is worth shouting out. Obviously, he did
Yeah.
lose to Tommy in the
Yeah.
following round, but good for the Canadian big server getting through a round. I know he's had a brutal last couple of
Yeah.
years, brutal COVID period, so it's good to see him get back to form.
Yeah, honestly, and a big time result for Tommy beating him because that's not an easy match to get through, especially like we don't know if he was feeling like 100% throughout the tournament. But yeah, massive result for him. Beating Milos and for Milos to like be back on the tour. Cool.
Now, one thing before we get into, I think, gaffes of the
Yeah,
week, I do
yeah,
want to call out more broadly, I think, underperformers.
yeah,
Um, I thought Tiafo losing to Dimitrov was kind of a tough loss, especially in that fashion, just,
yeah,
barely holding serve and just looking kind of out of sorts and not really energized and in the match for a big situation like that, where again, he is a guy who can win these types of tournaments. I was a
yeah.
little disappointed to see that. Obviously, Dimitrov is coming off a hot streak on the grass, and we knew he was going to be dangerous, but I thought Tiafo could have dug his teeth in a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'll go with another American as the underperformer of the week, and that's Taylor Fritz. He started. I mean, I had Yannick beating him just based off of Taylor's grass court form. Uh, and he had a five setter with Yannick, and Ymer just absolutely beat the brakes off of him in the final two sets. I was listening to Taylor comment on the match afterwards, and one of the things he was saying was that it really felt like he didn't know what to do. Taylor didn't know what to do from the baseline because Ymer was just playing so well off the ground. One of the things you talked about, right, is like he's so good. He's so aggressive on grass and he doesn't do that on other surfaces, right? And so hopefully this is like an actual like blueprint for him to like replicate on the hard course, right? Because his forehand and backhand are really good. Like he was opening up the court really well with that inside out and putting Taylor on the run. And I actually think Taylor's movement looked it was really tough. And the final three sets were light work for Ymer.
Absolutely. And I know we covered Felix losing to Michael Mmoh first round in the previous
Yeah,
episode, but that's worth calling out again as probably one of the top three underperformers
underperformers.
of the week and the tournament.
Should we go to overperformers?
Let's do it.
Anyone you got your eye on? I will say, like one of the things we were talking about in the pre-draw, or in the draw analysis was Lehechka making the fourth round, and he did exactly that, beating Tommy in the third round, up two sets of love. Tommy wins the next two, goes into a fifth set, and he holds on for a massive win. And I mean, this guy like had to retire today because of a blister, but the guy's got an absolute cannon of a game, and I think he's going to be really good moving forward.
Yeah, and about that match, that was one of kind of my personal moments of the tournament where
Yeah,
I think it was a three-court situation where Tommy had just pushed Lehechka to five.
yeah,
Carlos was in a five deuce game with Jerry where things started getting pretty dicey.
yep,
And then I think there was another match going on where I think Eubanks went up 6-6 on O'Connell. And that was
yeah.
all happening simultaneously. So that's definitely a good call out.
You got anyone else on your list for overperformer of the week?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Eubanks is obviously the one
Yeah,
who kind of is the obvious pick, so I won't mention anything more about him. I will say it's
yeah,
great to see Berrettini kind of coming back to form again,
yep,
another guy who's had a tumultuous 6 months, and
yeah,
I definitely expect. I mean, personally, I expected Sonego to beat him twice in a
beat
row,
him.
but
Yeah,
again, we've discussed that's hard to do. Berrettini came through and then actually made a pretty solid result overall, considering how much he struggled this year. Um, that would probably be my second one after the obvious pick of Eubanks.
Eubanks. Yeah,
And
I was
then,
gonna
I
say
mean,
big beating. Yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna say the bottom of the draw, they were all or overperformers because it was
Yeah,
just so wide open, right? Like Ymer
yeah.
making a third round, Galan making a fourth round,
Around, yeah,
Peya making a third round, Safulin in the fourth. Like these are all
yeah,
results that are quite shocking.
yeah.
I actually expected Bublik to beat Rublev, so
Like,
that was a
yeah.
bit of an upset for me. But I think Bublik is showing again the quality that he can produce.
Yeah, I was gonna say Cephalin and Berrettini as being the other two overperformers. So yeah, I agree with you there. Cool, awesome. I think we move on to the final section, the final segment, gaffes of the week. We've already covered the Wimbledon scheduling, but I mean the gaff of the week that I think we both probably want to talk about is Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. I mean, we saw this guy at Indian Wells, and one of the hotly debated topics was Fokina or Jack Draper over the next 5 years. Both of us took opposite sides of that. But Foki really, first of all, Foki played so well in this match. Had two match points at 5-4 to break Rune. The first one Runa comes to net and Foki has a chance to pass him, lob him, and does multiple things. Holger just solid at the net. I think the second one, Runa hits an ace or a service winner, and so that Foki wasn't able to consolidate or break there. Uh, but it was just shocking. 8-all in the super tiebreak, in the fifth or sorry in the tiebreak in the fifth set, and he goes for the underhand serve. He talked a little bit of it. He talked at the match like, yeah, I just shit myself. I didn't want to play the point. But it was just an absolutely like disappointing strategy. Like the underhand serve was extremely poorly hit, which I actually think is more of the issue than, well, actually, that's not true. The issue was more the fact that he didn't want to play that point, but the underhand serve was also just really poorly hit. And I mean, if he had done something crazy like what Kiggs does, or other guys who have like really good underhand serves and can like truly surprise them, then that would have been one thing. But it was just like a guinea ball for Holger.
Yeah, not to mention Runa was literally standing on the baseline,
Baseline, yeah,
which if you're on a clay court and your opponent's sitting 20 feet behind the baseline, maybe then
yeah.
you employ it. But 8-all in a fifth set breaker, it literally took me 2 hours to recover from watching that. I just couldn't believe what I saw, and I think a lot of people still haven't fully recovered. And
Yeah,
quite frankly, Foki might have lost some fans, in
yeah,
that big moment. I mean, for me personally, I was really bullish on him, but I just have to accept that some guys just don't have it, right? I mean,
yeah,
here's a guy who, just for context, second round Wimbledon 2022 last year, playing
yeah,
Jiri Veasley, fifth set breaker. What does he do? He loses the match on a ball abuse penalty.
yeah,
It, it's just inexplicable things like that where if you continue as a fan to get just dropped on the roller coaster, you will eventually drop your expectations. And I think that's kind of what has happened for me. I know Foki has potential, but I'm never going to get as invested in a match as I did with the Runa match because now I just don't trust him to perform in those big moments.
yeah. I mean, it's funny because you talk about like not wanting to play the points. Like, look, if you were really that tight, you didn't have to go for like a massive serve. Although Holger himself said, I was really glad he did that because he was actually serving insane. He could have easily just hit a kick serve or even like just like a slice serve. I mean, not he could have hit a slice serve or a kick serve, right? Like he had both options. He didn't have to go with the flat as the first option. So the fact that he decided to do the underhand of those three options is just absolutely baffling, and that one's going to hurt him. Although I did see that he played doubles and he won that the next day, so maybe that serves as a moral victory, but no chance. He's definitely on the first flight to Ibiza right now.
Yeah, fascinating dude for playing doubles. I noticed that too. That was an interesting decision, good moral victory, like you said. But I think hindsight's 2020, and it wasn't just that shot, right? The guy had other opportunities that we have
Opportunities.
mentioned to close this match out. He was up
Yeah,
8-5 in the
yeah,
breaker. He got broken, he got the mini break the point before, right? So
yeah,
it's tough to see. I really do think he imploded, and this was not an example of Runa coming through in the clutch. But
yeah,
again, Runa stayed solid, and like a mercurial person like Foki, you never
okay,
know what you're
yeah.
gonna get.
Yeah, I think that this is probably the first team all gaff for this week. I actually have one more, but do you have any others?
Go for it.
Go for it. Okay, I just want to call this out. Max Cressy, he was playing Laszlo Djere earlier this week. The man served like I think 25, nearly 25 aces, and just served 25 double faults as well. Like he was
Oh
just
my
blasting
God.
both. He was just. I mean, we talked about this, right? Like he blasts like both first and second serves. But in the tiebreak, third set, there was only 1 point difference, I think, or 1 point that Cressy played poorly, and that was serving a bomb for a second serve. Completely unnecessary. And that's why Djere won that match or won that tiebreak to win the match. I just think in that moment, like this is fine. You can do those two first serves when it's like, any other game, but 6-all to win the match. Yeah, no, or to win the third set, you got to play more discipline than that, and so that's going to be on my gaff of the week.
I like that one. That's absolutely brutal to see a +0 on a on the serve differential for a male. One quick tangent though on stat counting for Wimbledon. Um, they obviously aces and double faults are binary, but I want to point out that winners and or I should say unforced errors are a lot more subjectively counted at Wimbledon than the other slams. So as a fan, don't be surprised when you see a +50 differential. The Wimbledon stat counters do not count a lot of errors as unforced errors for
Really
whatever reason. Yeah, so you will see a lot of interesting stat lines at Wimbledon. Just know that the unforced error count is probably understated.
interesting. Another list on the long list. Another item on the long list of things that Wimbledon does their own way that they really don't need to do. But that's completely fine. Cool. Anything else we got to cover?
I don't think so.
All right. Um, Final episode, or not final, I want to say final. Another episode of Real Takes Tennis brought to you on Middle Monday. Stay tuned for another episode post Wimbledon, where Novak will lift his 24th Grand Slam title. But until then, take care. See ya.
Peace.